करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
The topic for the day is self-control. We will deal the topic with reference to sense control. There is this 3R traffic of life. The traffic of life is the transaction between us and the world. Individual and the world are interconnected and they transact with each other. From the individual's point of view, we can classify that into these three parts. It is called as the 3R traffic. First is the receipt of stimuli. Then there is a reaction within, and then there is a response back to the world. The receipt of the stimuli comes from the world, and what receives the stimuli is the organs of perception. Organs of perception are called as jnanendriyas in Sanskrit. Jnanendriyas means organs of knowledge, literally. They are called jnanendriyas because the knowledge of the world enters through these organs into us. So these are 5 in number. And then the reaction happens within you, that is based on your thoughts, based on your interest, based on your tendencies. We can say that is performed by the mind and intellect. And then what you give back to the world in the form of response mostly will be in the form of actions. So organs of action participate in this. In Sanskrit, they are called as karmendriyas. These are also 5 in number. So this system actually resembles how a factory or a workshop functions. The receipt of the stimuli comes from the external world. The mind receives it. Ideally, the intellect should process it and then send out the response back to the world. This is an ideal way of functioning. Like in a factory, you feed the raw materials from one side. Then there is machinery which process the raw material, and then what comes out on the other side is the finished product. So if we want to improve the quality of life and the quality of every experience, we need to improve at every level, be aware of what is happening at the level of the receipt of the stimuli, the reaction, and the response as well. If you compare the working of an office with reference to our system, the clerk in the office is equivalent to the mind. The manager in the office is equivalent to the intellect. When a parcel comes into the office, it is the duty of the clerk to receive it. He must submit it to the manager. The manager should decide what is the response that should be given, and the clerk can again dispatch the response. This is a good functional office. For any reason, if the manager is not available, or if the manager is weak, or if the manager is sleeping, then the clerk assumes the charge of the office. He receives the parcel, he opens it, and he sends the response as per his whim or fancy. Then that office may not last long. He is in the position of the clerk and not in the position of the manager because of the fact that he cannot decide. It is the manager who should decide. Exactly the same way, The stimuli enter our system and they get deposited in the mind at the sense centers. They tend to react with the already vasanas or the interest that we have. So it is the component of the mind and intellect that reacts with it. Based on which whatever response is there, that can be given out. Sometimes even keeping quiet is a response. Say for example, you get a WhatsApp message or you see the newspaper that there is going to be suddenly a cricket match. This is the stimuli that comes into your system. If you have interest in cricket, your mind immediately reacts to it. That you must watch the match, or how to go to the match, or when is the date, what are the engagement in that particular day. All this is the reaction that is happening. And based on that reaction, you can send out a response that you tell your friend that there is a match and he can get you ticket, or you are agitated and you write or if you write a letter to the office that you cannot attend that day, or whatever it is, that is the response. Or you are agitated and you are frustrated that you will not be able to watch the match live, is also a response. So this is a continuous traffic that is happening here. If the mind and intellect are not synchronized, here you see the gap between the mind and intellect. If they are not synchronized, the more the gap it is there, it is because of the greater level of ego in that person. And in that time, in that type of a person, the response will not be synchronized properly, and therefore his relationship with the world will be distorted. No doubt you need to control your thoughts and control at the reaction level, meaning in the factory you need to work at the overhauling of the machinery, maintenance of the machinery, that is definitely there. And you also need to look out for the responses. In other words, the finished product is automatically based on what is the raw material you feed and based on what is the machinery that is there. Automatically the finished product will come. Still, from time to time, you can take what is known as a quality check of the product. Similarly, if you introspect on your responses, on what type of action that is going out of your system, it will help you to go back and correct the previous procedures also. But what is very important here is the receipt of the stimuli. Because if the raw material itself is not proper in the first phase, however great the machinery is, however efficient the workers are, the product is not going to be good at all. You can make it externally look good, but the inherent quality of the product will not be good because the raw material is not good. If you have gone out of the house and there is a heavy rain, there was a blockage of the drainage that leads the water from your house to outside, and for some reason the rainwater gets collected and that seeps in through the pipe, and your house is now flooded with water, and water is still coming in, the gutter water is coming in from outside, sewage water. When you enter the house, you see that it is in a mess, and slowly the water is still coming from outside into the house. So you need to clean up the whole house. Means now where will you start? The first and foremost thing before you even start to clean the house is put something to stop the water from coming in, at least from now on. That means you have to control the further inflow of dirty water, because even if you clean with the best system, if the dirty water is going to keep coming in, then at no point of time you can get completely clean. So the first and foremost thing is to put a check valve or stop the inflow of the water somehow, dirty water somehow. It is exactly like that. The check valve must be applied at the level of sense perceptions. And that is where it is. Then obviously we need to attend to our mind and intellect, we need to attend to our actions, all that comes later. So the spiritual sadhana or our awareness begins with sense control or self-control. These senses are 5 in number. They are very powerful by themselves. They tend to gravitate towards their object of pleasure. That is why if you picturize the setting of Bhagavad Gita, you see that Lord Krishna is holding the horses with the reins and Arjuna is safely seated in the chariot. Of course, we know that it is 4 horses, but if you extend your imagination to see 5 horses there, because this metaphor is taken from the Kathopanishad. Kathopanishad talks about how the human personality can be compared to a chariot. So in the chariot, the Rathi or the rider or the person who is sitting there is the individual. In this case, Arjuna is the individual. Krishna, who controls the chariot, is the intellect. So the charioteer is the intellect. The reins are the mind. And the mind is yoked to the horses. The 5 horses represent the 5 senses. And each of these horses are very powerful. These horses are kept under control by a charioteer who is well trained and who is strong. So, if the intellect is not strong enough to control the senses with the help of the mind, then the 5 horses can take any direction by themselves and go, and that chariot is soon to be demolished. That chariot will perish. The body refers to the chariot. So this body, when it is drawn by itself, by the senses, then without any control, you are soon to meet with a disaster. It is accident waiting to happen. That is the power of the senses. The senses tend to gravitate to the objects, but remember, the objects of the world appear in your environment or come and disturb you only if you have a weakness for them. This functions on the basis of law of demand and supply. If I have a demand for Scotch whiskey, the bottles start to move in Scotland and they finally end up in my house. This pull is there because of my desire inside, my weakness inside. So there is, wherever there is a demand, there is a supply. Now why I'm saying this in the beginning is, some people tend to say that I don't want all these things. I know, suppose there are people who are gossiping and who come and tend to disturb you. You say that I really don't want to hear to gossips, but what to do? These people come and talk and I have to listen to that, you know. But remember, unless otherwise there is a keen demand, however subconscious or unconscious there within you, if that is not there, these things will not enter your system. So in other words, you create the world around you by the basic demand that is there within your system. This is a law that we are talking about. Then the other thing also happens, that there is a pull also from outside. That happens, but there is a basic weakness or a basic desire from within us that needs to be first accepted and understood. Only then self-control will happen. See, there are 2 types of diseases. Swami Ramatirtha talks about this. One is called as the adhyatmic, which can be equated to female disease, which is internal to you. Other is called as the adhibhautik. Adhibhautik is the male disease, which is external to you. Both diseases function and they function simultaneously. But of the two, you have to understand it is the female that attracts the male. The internal weaknesses that we have is what we refer to as the adhyatmic disease or the female disease. The external temptations that are there in the world in the form of sense objects, that is the male disease. So it is the female that attracts the male. This is the law. Now, when people want to really attempt to solve this, they mostly start from the wrong end. In other words, they try to set right the external circumstances and factors in such a way that they can achieve absolute self-control. This is not possible unless you start attending to the female disease first from within. We are not saying that you must not do something external to you. It should be done. But the starting point is to understand that it is the internal disease that attracts the external disease. So unless otherwise there is a concerted effort in understanding and accepting this, any amount of external change around you is not going to help us in having absolute control. For a time being, it will be there. It will show itself in some other area. In other words, you may horizontally move from one plane to the another. There is no vertical growth in terms of your spirituality if you merely attend to external disease. So both needs to be attended to, first of all, but we must understand and work on the female disease, which is more powerful. Now the senses within us, the weakness within us is expressing itself in the form of, it comes first in the form of our thoughts, then it comes in the form of our desire and emotions, then it at the actual physical level, we try to express it. There is a corresponding supply from the world in terms of sense objects, in terms of emotions for the mind, and thoughts for the intellect. So constantly there is a tug of war that is happening between the individual and the world. You can excuse this diagram which is drawn with matchsticks, but I hope it conveys the meaning. The senses by themselves are having a very devastating influence. Senses, as we said, are very powerful. The portion of Bhagavad Gita in Sthita Prajna, probably from verses 61 to 68, one of the outstanding portions. What we covered in last class about anger management is taken from there, and the blueprint of self-control also comes there only. So what we are talking about is basically from that portion of Bhagavad Gita only. The senses of the mind, the senses of the individual, which is within him, is very powerful, and it is the first one that tends to lose itself in the fight with the world. We will not call it fight, it's the transaction with the world. There may be a tug of war going here or there, but when you lose your self-control, what falls first is the senses. The moment the senses fall, they do not keep quiet. The senses pull the mind along. First, the senses fall to the objects of the world, and once the senses fall, they do not keep quiet, they pull the mind along. Once the mind goes away, it pulls along the intellect. Mind pulls the intellect away. And when intellect is gone, the individual falls. This is how the destruction happens. Everything starts with the senses. See, we need to understand from the modern perspective of Neo-Vedantins who promote spirituality. No doubt, we are not talking about the spirit in which they say that either people completely restrain themselves and not contact the world at all in the name of spirituality, which we may call as self-denial. Self-denial is going to frustrate a person. Self-denial is when you do not even have the basic minimum contact with the world, contact with the sense objects. It is not possible to survive that way. You will see some people, they will have vrata. Vrata means in the name of spirituality, they observe some fasting, vow, etc. On Monday, they do it for Shiva, Tuesday for Hanuman, Friday for Shakti, Wednesday for Vishnu, like that. Throughout the week, they keep some vrata or something, denying themselves even the basic eating. And you will find that they will not be even able to relate to their grandchildren properly. Extreme frustration and anger comes out of that person. Remember, all this fasting and other things which are very, very highly good habits, ennobling habits which help us in spirituality. When a person disproportionately, excessively does that without proper understanding and the purpose behind it, without moderation, it is going to result in frustration. 6th chapter of Gita says, Yukta hara viharasya yukta cheshtasya karmasu yukta swapnava bodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. One has to be moderated in sleep, food habits, and brahmacharya. These are the 3 things that yoga talks about. Ayurveda also talks about for healthy living. These 3. Your food habits, your sleep habits, and your recreation habits, which includes all types of contacts, and particularly the highest form of sensual contact also. They need to be moderated. Majority of the people of the world fall under the category of leading a householder's life who are in what is known as a pravritti marga. Pravritti marga means a path which tends them to go out into the world, be in the householder's life, earn money, run a family. This is where majority of the people are there. Therefore, if they want to take up spirituality, it is the golden middle path that they must follow, which is to maintain a balance between everything. So, a person who does not have basic minimum contact of the world is sure to frustrate himself, and that is like a spiritual suicide. On the other hand, other set of people completely let loose their senses and indulge in the sense objects of the world. That is other extreme, where they completely lose their vitality, they lose their freedom. See, what is interesting is we talked about surrender a few weeks back. Surrender apparently gives an idea that you lose your freedom, but it is with true surrender that you gain absolute freedom. A person who has surrendered is completely free. Converse is also true. We feel that we have license to do anything. The so-called freedom, it may be called as licentiousness. A child has, let us say, a mother has given money and it has freedom to eat what it wants. So it goes all out and spends the money, buys a lot of chocolates and eats on a regular basis. Invariably, the child loses its freedom to the chocolate. It becomes a slave of the chocolate. So it's very interesting. When a person thinks that he is free to do anything, he may end up as slave. He loses his freedom. When a person actually who surrenders himself to the Supreme, or even at the relative level surrenders himself to a high ideal, he is free. He is free. So therefore, one set of people completely deny themselves of any contact. Other set of people completely lose themselves in the sense objects and they lose their personality completely. These senses, as we said, are very powerful. They pull the mind along, then the mind pulls the intellect along. Do not ever poo-poo the senses. Meaning, do not ever take the stance that I can take care. You tell me, there are some people who say, you want me to leave this habit, cigarette? Just like that I can do it. It is not so easy. It is not easy at all. Even for a person who is striving in the spiritual path, these are the exact words of Gita. He says, Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipashchitaha. A person who is striving very hard in the spiritual path also, for him, with all the knowledge that he has got also, it is very difficult to control the senses. That is why sages like great Rishi Vishwamitra and others, they educate the mankind about the power of the senses. Vishwamitra as a great Rishi can take care of 1,000 Menakas, it is possible. Yet, the episode in his life shows that he falls from the great height of tapas for the temptation of Menaka, just to educate the mankind as to the power of the senses. Do not take these senses very lightly. That is the message that is there. It is not for us to understand and derive a wrong message. Even if Vishwamitra himself cannot do, where is the chance for us? So let us not get into the sense control at all. No, that is not the message. Even at the great height, do not poo-poo the senses. Do not take them for granted. That is the message there. When senses are confronting the sense objects, they lose their power. When, see, the episode in Ramayana, if you want to interpret it this way, this is very, very nice and symbolic. In the original Ramayana, you see that Vali and Sugriva are fighting and Rama is out of the picture, but he is there in the side. In the Kamba Ramayana only, it is very clearly given as though he is hiding behind the tree and shooting. But whatever be the case, there is not a direct confrontation of Vali by Rama there. What does it symbolically represent? Vali represent the senses within you, rather the sense objects of the world. Vali has a very peculiar boon that anybody who confronts him, he takes half the power of that person. 50% of this man's power goes to Vali. So it is not possible to defeat Vali even if you are stronger than him, because when you confront him, he takes half your power away. So therefore Rama gives a method that you need to step aside by the side, maybe hide somewhere and shoot Vali. What does it mean? It means that if you want to exercise self-control, you cannot do it by placing yourself in the vicinity of the object or in front of the object and say that I will try to control. It is not possible. A child who is addicted or is wanting to see the television and the exam is there, he wants to study. Let me look at the screen and study. It will not work. Even as you are halfway trying to concentrate something, it is just not possible because the television takes half the power away. When a person who genuinely wants to leave alcohol also, if he wants and he goes to the club and says that I'll just chat with my friends, but I will not drink, not possible. Sooner or later, when the bottle is there in front of him, he tends to lose himself in the presence of the bottle. So if you need to tackle the senses, first you need to withdraw yourself. We'll come to that. As we said, the five senses are yoked to the mind. And when mind loses itself, the redemption is very difficult. The redemption is very, very difficult. At that point, there is no other way except complete surrender. This we talked about in surrender also. But see, there is a beautiful episode in Mahabharata. It has to be literally understood as it is to enjoy that. But there is a symbolic meaning also to it. In the gambling that is happening between Yudhishthira and Shakuni, Duryodhana, all the material possessions are gone in gambling, and then who goes is all the five brothers. One by one, they lose themselves. Yudhishthira keeps them as the what do you call that? A bait or whatever, and he plays. And once they lose themselves, Draupadi is pulled and she is kept as the pawn there. she loses herself. She doesn't lose herself. Yudhishthira loses Draupadi also. And then these 5 brothers who are the husbands of Draupadi helplessly watch Draupadi being dragged into the court. They cannot do anything. They are helpless in that case. And the mind is absolutely helpless there. At that point of time, what really saves the situation is absolute surrender of Draupadi. So if you look at that episode from this angle, the 5 Pandava brothers married to Draupadi is equivalent of 5 senses married to this mind. Once they lose themselves, invariably your mind will be dragged in and that whole personality gets lost here. There is no way that a person can redeem himself very easily after that. He has to go through a lot of suffering after that. Remember, all these 5 Pandavas are each very powerful. Even if you have weakness for any one sense organ, that is enough to destroy you. This is what Viveka Chudamani says. Viveka Chudamani is a text attributed to Adi Shankaracharya. It's an introductory text on Vedanta. There in one verse it says how any one weakness of any one sense organ is enough to destroy the creature. He gives the example of 5 animals, 5 creatures. First he talks about a moth. Moth has a weakness for eyesight. It flies into the candle or source of light. Even as one wing is burnt, it flies with the other wing. Even if that wing is burnt, it will crawl upon the candle till it completely destroys itself, because it is irresistibly drawn towards the candle. This is the plight of a moth. Then you have the deer. Deer has a weakness for sound. When the hunters want to catch the deer, they play a very bass music with the drums and with a cow horn type of an instrument that they have. Immediately the deer is excited when it hears the sound. It comes out from the hiding into the open. It is shot or either caught. So the weakness for the ears, sound, is enough for the destruction of the deer. You have fish, which has a weakness for taste. Obviously, fish may not have tongue, but here what is representing is the tendency to eat all the time, the taste. So you find that the fisherman puts an angle into the water with the bait and the fish gobbles up. In that process, it gets caught into the hook and it cannot redeem itself. The fish is caught, it dies because of its weakness for the tongue. Then he talks about an elephant, which has a weakness for touch. In the mating season particularly, they dig a very big pit, which is narrow at the bottom and broad and very broad at the top, and they put a leaves there, and when it is running helter-skelter, it falls down. And what they do is they bring a trained female elephant and make that touch the male elephant, and it is that weakness of that touch that this elephant, as though, gives out a cry that I am your slave. That huge elephant which can take care of hundreds of people becomes a slave of a man because of its weakness towards touch. In the mating season, it runs helter-skelter because of that only. And then he talks about a bee. The bee has a weakness for smell. The flower is open and the bee goes inside the flower, and then the flower closes and the bee is caught inside and it dies. So Adi Shankaracharya leaves with a very sort of a sarcastic question. Any one sense weakness is enough for your destruction. Oh man, you have got all the 5 weaknesses. What is your chance of survival? Like that he puts a question. But what is interesting is, as far as the animals are concerned, as far as the other creatures are concerned, they tend to go berserk only according to the natural timings. They do not overeat. It is all well controlled and well planned within the scope of the nature. Only a human being, even if his stomach is upset, he tends to overeat. Or whatever. We indulge in other sensual activities because of our weakness. So if the intellect is not developed within us, there is no chance of this self-control at all. So the question arises as to how do we start, where do we start, what is the solution? Because all of us know the power of the senses. We don't need a Bhagavad Gita or a guru to come and tell us this. We know, and after certain amount of experiences in life, we know what is the impact of that in our life also. Even as we have great ideas to do certain things, great thoughts, our energy gets wasted through the sensual indulgences. See, remember, we may have naturally control over 3 or even 4 of the senses. But it is that weakness in that 1 or 2 that is very powerful, and that energy oozing out through that is enough for our destruction. When I say destruction, what it means is a purposeful life that you want to live for yourself. It is according to your conviction. It is according to your knowledge. It is according to your shraddha that you want to do. You yourself will not be able to do it, and helplessly you will be drawn away by the senses. So you feel a sense of frustration. You feel a sense of that you want not liking yourself. In that sense, I am saying that a person does self-cancelling activities. After very many things, he comes back to square one because of the loss of self-control. That's about all. So one need not take it to the extreme level of fear. Yes, obviously there has to be some amount of fear about this, but we are talking about a stage where you yourself, who is not working up to your own potential, that is not a life that is worth being proud of. In that sense, I am saying we need to first start exercising self-control. As I said, the modern people, gurus also, they rightly bring Vedanta to that extent and spirituality to that extent to say that you need not completely frustrate yourself of not contacting at all. But then when they say Vedanta is meant for your happiness, your enjoyment, it teaches you how to enjoy the world also. There you need to also exercise caution that Vedanta is not promoting enjoyment of the world at the cost of your pursuit. If you are a self-controlled person and you are dedicated in your pursuit, you know exactly how to contact the world and derive pleasure out of it also. So therefore, if a person genuinely wants to come out of any weakness, any addiction, any habit for that matter, if he wants to exercise self-control, where should he begin? What is the starting point? First and foremost thing is, just as the theorem said that there is a supply based on the demand, that is a law. The converse of that is also a law, that sense object turn away from an abstinent man. This is the fundamental theorem, that when you are genuinely wanting to abstain from the sense object, they do not come and disturb you in your environment. This is the law. This again has to be first fundamentally understood and taken into your system first. How it gets implemented and practiced comes at the second level, but you need to get this into the system that unless otherwise I have a strong conviction within me that I want to get out of this and I am turning myself into an abstinent person from inside, I am not going to get away or free from the temptations from outside. So everything first starts with a good resolution from the mind that I need to master the senses. So the question is only, you are keeping the horses under your control and not allowing the horses to go by themselves. See, that is what is the essence of brahmacharya also. Brahmacharya is a stage where he is a student stage where all his senses are controlled and he is focusing on the study. But what it essentially means is walking on the path towards Brahman. So therefore, a brahmachari is taught the knowledge in a situation in an environment, in a system where he is not allowed to simultaneously indulge. Once he gains sufficient control, obviously the internal vasanas, the other tendencies within us, they are going to come up and they have to find their vent. When you want to have an experience of it, you must intelligently allow it to do it in a way that you can dharmically enjoy all the pleasures of the world also. So we can say at 94, still Swamiji can relish a mango or a sweet. Is a proof that there is no restriction for enjoyment at all. At any stage it can be enjoyed, but most of us, they tend to exhaust their quota at a very young age, and then the doctor says no more you can eat sweet, and rest of their life they are only looking at others eating the sweet, which is a very, or it is like what say in William Cowper's poem, it says pineapple and the bee. With hopeless wish, one looks and lingers, one breaks the glass and cuts his fingers. Either with hopeless wish, one looks and lingers, it's a tamasic state where he is absolutely not able to do at all. And he is just looking at the objects of enjoyment where he has no capacity to enjoy, or is not possible for him to enjoy. So extremely a frustrated person. Or one takes the plunge and breaks the glass. He breaks the rules and goes ahead with that enjoyment and cuts his fingers. He suffers the consequences of it. So, if we let loose ourselves, either of these things will happen. So, first and foremost thing is that this is the basic. With this base, then we can work out the solution at different levels. But the base is that there must be a strong resolution at the mental level that I need to master the senses. I cannot allow the senses to dictate terms to me. This is a resolution. This is what is known as a firm conviction that one needs to develop. And as I said, there are intelligent ways to go ahead and enjoy, but it must be sanctioned by the intellect. So that is the resolution. And then, if a person wants to get away from the already developed addictions, habits, and weaknesses, you need to physically abstain yourself in the beginning. If a person irresistibly goes towards alcohol, when the bell rings at 6 o'clock, he has to go to the club or he has to go to the bar and he has to drink, because it has become a habit in him. It has become an addiction in him. Very clearly with his intellect and knowledge, he understands that what is alcohol doing to him. He knows even better than a doctor, because now he has got the knowledge and experience also. So he can give a lecture on that. But when the time comes, he invariably is drawn towards it. So therefore, if he wants to come over it, what is the first step that he needs to do is that at that time, he needs to physically withdraw himself from that environment or situation. If people really want to get out of the habit of gossiping and talking negatively about others, when such an environment presents itself, it could be a gathering, it could be a party, it could be wherever that gathering is there, you have to withdraw yourself, at least from when it is going to start like that, at least from that scene you move yourself. That is the first step. But since the mind is already addicted, there will be a frustration. Therefore, you need to intelligently substitute that time. This has to go hand in hand. Substitute that time with knowledge. So in other words, if you are not wanting to go to club at that point of time, choose a satsang to go. It is a positive spiritual substitute that you need to give, because we are talking to a person who wants to control himself, and wanting to control himself comes to a person who understands that there is a purpose of life and the purpose of self-control also. We are not talking to a person who thinks that life is meant for enjoyment. We are not talking to a person who says birth is the beginning, death is the end. You do whatever you want in the middle. There is nothing that you need to worry about. Even, is rinam kritva gritam pibet. Even if you don't have ghee in the house, borrow money, buy ghee and eat. Like that, there is a philosophy. Charvat philosophy, materialistic philosophy. We are not talking about that person. We are not talking about one who is following that. A person who really wants to become a real human being in a human form. See, first is to come from animal state to human state, then from human state to God state. So, what is the human state that we are talking about? He is still having the weakness. He is still having desire, anger, and all those tendencies within him. But at least he is aware of them and he has developed sufficient intellect to control them. So, at least we need to come to that stage first. 5th chapter, verse 22 or 23 says, Shaknoti haiva yasodum prak sharira vimokshanat kama krododbhavam vegam yes sada sasukhi naraha. Kama krododbhavam vegam. In that verse, you need to underline that word vegam. Vegam is the momentum that is carrying within a personality. Same thing Wordsworth says in Ladomia, control thy rebellious passion, he says. Passion is allowed. Desire is allowed. Allowed in the sense at the level that we are, it is a matter of fact that we need to accept and go along. But he says, control thy rebellious passion. Rebellious passion is this vega, is this way. So first we need to get this flow under control. Therefore, at that point of time, when you really want to get out of it, you need to substitute that with some positive dosage. If a person has to abstain from cigarette when there is a itch in the mouth, you have to give him some substitute to have in the mouth. Like that it is. You need to have, because of still there will be frustration, and understand this with knowledge that this is a price that you need to pay. Because of our indulgences, because of our complete letting loose ourselves into the sensual enjoyment, we have developed an irresistible habit now. So when you withdraw now, when you are abstinent, there will be a pain, and that is a pain that you need to pay as a price. You need to understand that also. Because if a person wants to get over any weakness by completely experiencing it, that's not possible. Though it is recommended in by certain spiritual masters, and certain ashrams also tend to encourage that, maybe in a half-baked knowledge way, it will not work. Bhajagovindam gives this picture only. 15th verse, it says, Ankam galitam palitam muntam dashana vihinam jatam tundam vriddho yati grihitva dandam tadapina munchati asha pindam. It picturizes a man who is completely, whose hair has turned grey, whose tooth is gone, walks about with a stick, and yet he says his desires are very fresh. That means it picturizes a person who has led a completely indulgent life. If you want to derive message out of it, thinking that by going through all the sensual enjoyments one after the other, I am going to get rid of the desires, it is a false notion. There is a movie in Tamil also. I think it's a remake of some English movie, Rajinikanth movie, where his father bequeaths a large legacy for him, which is 3,000 crores or something. And in order to get that, he has to spend 300 crores or 30 crores within a month. And that spending must be actual spending, not investing somewhere, not buying assets or something. So he says, in the video, he says, if my son knows what is it to be with money in a very big way, then he will develop a revulsion for money and he will not be attached to money. This is his philosophy. See, there is an element of fact in it, but it's not the full thing. That he says because his father saw him smoking, and instead of saying that don't smoke, he said he locked me inside the room and he gave me packs and packs of cigarette, and he said throughout the night you must smoke. And I enjoyed first, but I could not do it after a point. Morning when I came out of the room, I was completely resolved that I will never smoke again. So I got rid of this habit because I indulge in the cigarette. Like that, I want my son to get rid of the weakness for money when he wants to spend more money. No doubt, when you go all out and indulge in some sense pleasure, you will develop a sort of a frustration, which probably, if time allows, we'll see in the next class about why this happens. You will develop a revulsion, but what happens is that the desire with which we do the action creates a vasana, a desire within us, which will irresistibly manifest later on. So for a time being, you may seem to have gotten over it, but the relish will linger. The relish will linger. And that relish is that will go only finally upon realization. Again, the same portion of Bhagavad Gita says, Rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtvani vartate. That rasa will still linger. Rasa means the taste. Because it is carrying on for janmas together. We do not know. The taste will be there. But if you are able to visualize the divinity, that also goes, it says. So till that point, remember that the rule is that the greatest weakness will go last only. Like that it is. So you need to substitute that time with positive knowledge. Remember, from practical point of view, a person does not leave certain habits in stages. Have you seen any person say that this month who is a chain smoker, this month I will smoke 10 cigarettes a day, next month 9, next month 8, at the end of 10 months I will completely leave cigarette? It doesn't work that way. By force, when doctor says one more cigarette and you will die, he has to leave it completely. Maybe he will start chewing pan or something, but he has to leave it that day. He is still alive, a famous journalist who is a Bengali, and based on his food habits from his beginning, he is a non-vegetarian. But he is a very, very nice and a very fine writer, very thinking person. He said one day he happened to see the video of how chicken are slaughtered, and the innocent small chick which is going in the machine to get itself slaughtered alone, that chick escaped actually. They put it again in the bell to get it slaughtered, and he saw that video. He said something happened within him, and from that day onwards he left eating meat. That is his experience. He had written about it. So when we see in life, actually what happens is that when a person does like this, it is a paradigm shift that happens in life. This we are talking about a particular sudden jerk that happens within you based on a deep impact. Again, it is awareness, again it is knowledge. There is no other substitute for that. That is knowledge only. But when it is having a deep impact, it happens. But when a person wants to generally get over, I am saying if he finds that, understands the awareness about non-vegetarianism and he wants to get over it. Because these are food habits and this is there inculcated right from the beginning. Vedanta does not say that you eat this or don't eat this. That is not the role of Vedanta. That is not how it functions or how it educates. It only gives you higher knowledge and higher values. You concentrate on that, you work towards that, then automatically what will happen is, you will find yourself over a period of time that you are withdrawn from what earlier was considered a weakness within you or a habit within you. This will also happen. So suddenly you find that last 6 months I have not eaten at all. Nobody asked you to leave that, but you were fed with this knowledge. So the abstinence and knowledge should go simultaneously. That is the continuous cycle of growth. Chapter 3, last verse, he says, Samstabhyatmanam atmana. He says, you need to withdraw, abstain. At that time, you have to substitute with knowledge. Even for a example, the study that we do in academy, it is just 3 years of withdrawal from the normal mundane activities that we do in the world. It is not a big sannyas or something. You can say a temporary sannyas if you want to call it. But that withdrawal is necessary to fortify the intellect. So you are substituted with knowledge and other aspects of the schedule that is there to strengthen yourself. Then when you come out into the world, you need to work with that. So that can be taken, or even on a weekly basis when you attend a class or 2 days, that is a withdrawal. or you do your early morning study, and that is a withdrawal. Otherwise, on a Sunday morning, you could have done somewhere else, you can come to the class, you are substituting with it. So to the extent that you withdraw, it gives you strength when you gain knowledge. With that strength, you can withdraw a little more later. So these two act as what you call two pedals of the cycle. So one helps the other. Abstinence helps you to gain knowledge. Knowledge gain helps you to gain further abstinence. In the cyclical growth alone can be gain self-control. Okay, then we need to talk about self-control at the two levels of our personality, which probably we'll take it up in the next class. We'll just summarize that we need to work on self-control or sense control in the beginning, because we need to work on the receipt of the stimuli at that level, the raw material itself. So therefore, there is no substitute for satsang. Bhajagovindam says, satsangatve nissangatva. Bad company increases your attachment. It's a very interesting thought. Maybe you can think about it. If we get a chance, we'll discuss in the next class. But it's a thought for you. Why is it says satsangatve nissangatva? If company of the bad people is going to increase your attachment into the world, why will not satsang increase the attachment to good people in the world? But he very clearly says, satsangatve nissangatvam. Satsang leads to detachment. Satsang leads to evolution. There is no substitute for satsang. Of course, satsang is at all levels. What you eat, what you study, what you hear as music, everything. But essentially, is talking about a group of people. So even as you are, we are irresistibly in the social media now. The world has shrunk so much that it invades wherever. Even sleep, you are having that mobile, and it is coming through Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all the videos, WhatsApp, it is coming. So you cannot resist. At least here also think in terms of who you are associating with, who are you following, and who are the friends. Invariably, at the end of, you go into it, and for 10 minutes you think, that 1 hour goes, and we think, what is it that I have done in 1 hour? But 1 hour goes just like that, you irresistibly fall into it. So at least, even if you have to go into social media, television, whatever it is, be very clear about who you associate with. That is satsang. That is at the receipt level. Then we said there are two types of diseases. The female disease is from within, which is the most powerful one. It attracts the male disease from outside. Sir, the amount of advertisement that average American saw in the 1950s in his whole lifetime is what we see within 1 year. And this is a statistics few years back. Now, each and everything is, every moment is an advertisement. And what are these advertisements? Except for this Prime Minister, some COVID message and this and that in Doordarshan that you see, or Gramin Vikas Yojana or something like that to build toilets. Every advertisement is for any of the 1-5 census only, nothing else. So it is just hitting us all the time. So why will it not hit us? Because we have a weakness within us. We will be automatically attracted towards it. Then the temptation takes half your power away. The tug of the war is between individual and the world. The senses fall first. Then senses drag the mind. And the mind drags the intellect away. And once the intellect drags, the person completely loses himself, perishes. How does the intellect resurrect itself with self-control? That probably is the continuation of this topic in the next class. And then we says, any one weakness is enough for you to get destroyed, and a person has all the 5 weaknesses generally. Even if you are having control over 3-4 senses, it doesn't matter. That one weakness, that one window that is open, through that only the thief comes, and then he destroys the whole personality, whole house. And the solution for that is the law functions that sense object turn away from the abstinent man. This is the theorem. This you need to internalize. Mind well resolved that I need to be the master of the senses. An initial abstinence at the physical level is important, however much a pain that you go through for a few hours, weeks or months, whatever be the time. And then you need to substitute that with knowledge. These two form a continuous cycle of growth. What are the two aspects of self-control? We will take it up in the next class. We'll open up for questions this summer. Yeah, if there are any questions, you can unmute and ask, or you can type it out in the chat.
So you're saying that there are two types of diseases. The female is the internal and the male is the external.
Right.
And the female attracts the male.
Right.
So in this whole context, what are we trying to achieve in terms of how to get over both these diseases in that sense?
Basically, if you have conquered the female disease, you are free from it. In other words, when there is no weakness inside, any amount of temptation cannot tempt you from outside. These two are supplementing and complementing each other, but the root of it is from within you. That is the point I'm trying to make. So however much you try to even run away to the Himalayas and try to set your external situation in whichever way that you think it will be conducive for you, as long as you are not attending to the internal disease, this is going to come in some form or other. That's the point.
Poornam Adah Poornamidam Poornat Poornamudachyate Poornasya Poornamadaya Poornamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.